Hi, and welcome to week 2 of the Patriot Quilt Along. This week we're going to be making the flying geese, which is the first step in constructing the quilt. Before we begin, I've got a couple of housekeeping things. Let me first show you my fabric selections. As you can see, I've selected a variety of reds and blues. The reds will be for the wavy parts and the snowballs. And the blues that I have a variety of, I'm going to be using one single fabric, the dotted fabric, for the background of the star blocks, and I'm going to use the red, white, and blue star fabric for the snowballs, and then the other blues that you see there are going to be used for the places for the pinwheels in the star blocks. And then I also selected a variety of whites, tone on tones. Again, I'm pulling from my stash, and I actually went through and pulled from my scrap bags as well. And so I'm going to use up those scraps first and then dig into the yardage that I pulled from my stash in order to make this. The flag fabric that you see, that may be for the outer border of Patriot, or I may end up using it in the back. Now, if you have not made your fabric selections, I invite you to watch week 1 video or to read my week 1 post. I will provide links to those in this video. Also, if you have not yet downloaded the Patriot pattern, make sure you sign up using the link in the video description for these special newsletters for Patriot. By doing so, I'll be able to keep you up with all the changes that happen as we go along. And also, you'll get a 30% discount off the PDF version of Patriot for signing up. So make sure you take care of that. Now, back to this week's topic, which is making flying geese. As I explained in the week 1 video, this pattern uses the 4 at a time, no waste flying geese method. If you prefer to use another method, go check them out on my YouTube channel. Then download my cutting guide for flying geese, which will help you do the conversions so that you'll know what size to cut your fabric in order to use this alternate method that you've chosen. My assumption is that you are going to be using the 4 at a time method, so that's what I'm going to show you today. Again, make sure you pick up your Patriot pattern. I've already selected my fabrics. This is going to be for the background of the star block, so it's part of the flying geese units. And you, for the 4 at a time method, you cut 1 large square and then 4 small squares. Now you'll notice that in the pattern, it was something 7/8. And if you don't be tempted to bump it up to a different size, because your flying geese will not end up being quite as accurate. But if you download my cutting guide, you can cut slightly bigger squares of blue and slightly bigger squares of white, and come up with slightly oversized flying geese at the end that you trim down. So if you have trouble with your 1/4 inch, that is my recommendation. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is mark the back of our white fabrics with a diagonal line. And there are shortcuts that you can use where you do not have to mark at all. One of them involves using something called diagonal seam tape. The other one involves using a sewing machine laser. And if you go watch my 4 at a time, no waste method flying geese video, you'll see how to incorporate the no mark method. So again, my assumption is that you're following the pattern directions exactly, and that you're going to be marking. So the first thing you need to do is mark on the back of your fabric. I just use a lead pencil, mechanical pencil, and I also use these, which are called 1/4 inch seam markers. These are by Fons and Porter. They come in 2 different sizes. I think I can use the smaller one for this. I'm also using a sandboard because I don't want my fabric to slip. And what I'm doing using these is I'm putting the yellow line on the ruler from corner to corner, and then I'm going to mark the sewing lines. This enables me to come out with perfect half square triangles because I'm literally drawing the lines that I'm going to sew. Otherwise, you just need to draw a single line from corner to corner. And then you're going to be sewing a 1/4 inch away from those. And the sewing lines that I drew earlier didn't really come out very, so I'm going to do them again just real quick. There. So again, you can mark a single line corner to corner, or you can mark these sewing lines a 1/4 inch away. So now I'm going to go ahead and mark the back of the rest of these fabrics. With white tone on tone, sometimes you really have to take a look at them to figure out which side is the right side and which side is the wrong side. So excuse me one moment while I go ahead and quickly mark the sewing lines here. Then we're going to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to show you how to make your flying geese. Oops. Let's set up our first one to sew, your blue square that you've chosen for the background. And you're going to take your fabrics, your 2 white squares, and put them in the corners. And I always pin because they tend to shift a little bit as I'm sewing, so I don't want that to happen. And place this one exactly in the corner. And then pin. Then we can go to the sewing machine, but I want to show you something first. Oops. Don't move. Let's see. Do I have my... I'm looking around for my scissors. Ah, there they are. Scissors real quick. Now, a tip that I show you in my 4 at a time no waste method is to reduce bulk by trimming. Notice how these 2 squares overlap right here. This overlapping part can make your seams a little bulky. So one tip that I can give you is to just gently pick these up together and cut. Make sure you're just cutting that bit. And there you go. You just cut away the overlap part, and that reduces the bulk instantly. Now we are ready to go to the sewing machine. See you there. So we're at the sewing machine, and my normal sewing machine is at the spa, so I'm using a slightly smaller one, and so hopefully you can see. I have marked where I want to sew on these 2 squares. Also mark that diagonal because I was showing you different ways to do it. But I'm just going to sew on the marked line. That is the simplest way to be accurate. If you have only marked the diagonal from corner to corner, then you're going to be sewing a 1/4 inch away from that diagonal. I like to sew off on a little scrap of fabric here. That helps me get even tension, I think. So let me get in here and there, clip. I have sewn this side, so now I'm going to turn it around and sew on the marked line there. we'll go to our next step after we get these sewn. Sorry if this machine's a little louder than my normal one. It's a portable. I like to take it to, it's perfect for taking to sewing machine classes and things like that, quilting classes. But it is a little bit louder perhaps. Okay, so I've sewn on the two lines that I marked that were 1/4 inch from the, here, there, okay. This is the line from corner to corner, and I've sewn 1/4 inch away from that. So now it's time to go to the cutting table, and then we're going to come back to the sewing machine again. Hi, we're back from the sewing machine where we have sewn our white squares onto the blue square by sewing on either the marked lines or 1/4 inch from the line that we marked from point to point, from corner to corner. Now, what we need to do is cut this apart. Oops, I need a bigger ruler. Good thing I have rulers handy. So, we're going to cut on that middle line, the line that we marked that went from corner to corner. And, well, it helps if I cut. There. So now what you have are what I call two, they will look like heart shapes here in a minute, because what I'm going to do is press these up like that. So let me get my iron. And typically you will just press over like that. I like to use a wool pressing mat. I like to use a very hot iron, no steam, because I don't like to introduce any chance of stretching out the bias, so I don't like to add steam. Instead, I will spray with a water bottle when I need to have water. This one has been pressed over. I like to press my seams open using my wool clapper, so let me show you how you do that. I like to kind of finger press the seam open first and then use the nose of my iron to do the rest of the work for me. And this particular clapper is rounded on the top, and it really helps in opening up that seam. And that's what I prefer to do. But you can press your seams over if you want. Now, regardless, the next step is with these two heart units. Got two. Open up. There, two heart units. Now we have to add another white square to each. I've already marked these, and for these I marked the lines I'm going to sew and not the point from diagonal to diagonal. Gonna just put that exactly in the corner there. There you go. And notice part of it will hang out or hang off the edge. Just like to make sure I've got that exactly. Yep. And we'll do this one as well. And then I'll meet you back at the sewing machine. And we're gonna sew these two. Back at the sewing machine again, and I'm going to be sewing on the lines that I've marked. Let's say that's one. all we have to do is sew on the second line for both of these two squares, and we'll be done. So now that we've sewn the two lines on each of these squares, we're ready to go to the cutting table. So cut them apart and we'll have 4 flying geese. Back from the sewing table again, and we've sewn our last squares on each of the 2 heart units. So we just have to cut it apart. And like before, we're going to cut down the center of the white square. And I don't know how precise you need to be, but I always do try to make sure I'm cutting exactly down the center. If you're not too precise, then your seam allowances will be a little bit smaller than they need to be. So, as you can see, we now have 4 flying geese, but we need to press them. So let me get my pressing over here. You can press over like that if you wish. I'm going to press open because that's what I prefer. And after I've pressed this, we'll check it for size, because I always like to do that. And there'll be probably a little bit of trimming needed. Okay, so these need to be trimmed to the size indicated in the pattern. And it's pretty much, looks like it's just a little off, so let me, sometimes when it's just a little off, you simply need to press it again. I find that pressing again and then using my wool pressing mat really helps things get into shape. Oh, let me press it from this side as well. All right, now let's take a look at this puppy. As you're trimming, make sure that the middle measurement, in this case it would be 2 3/4, would be right where the point is for your flying geese, so that you're trimming evenly on both sides as needed. And of course, as you trim, you'll be trimming off those dog ears as well. And again, it came out pretty good. So I just dog ears. Okay, so here's my flying geese, and I just need to trim up these others, and I will have 4. You need to make 36 in the pattern, and I should have mentioned before that the color you're using here is blue 2, and of course you're using the white. And also, it occurred to me that since I'm making mine scrappy, I could have used 4 different squares in this process, and then my points would have been different colors. But so I'm going to end up with, because I didn't do that, I'm going to end up with these 2 points going to be the same fabric. So my scrappy will be perhaps a little bit more organized than it should be, but my fabrics are so close to each other, I don't think anybody will know or care. But that's just something to keep in mind. Now, let me set up again and stay tuned. And if you are using AccuQuilt, I will show you how to use it to make your flying geese. And if you're not using AccuQuilt, just make sure you check the links for checking out the other methods of flying geese, for reading my blog post, which is for this week, and it contains a lot of the same information as the video, but sometimes I think of other tips and stuff. So, oh, and by the way, we've got some additional sponsors this week, so if you check out my blog post, you'll find out about them as well. So if not, then we'll see you next time. Same bat channel, same bat time. Yeah, I know I'm dating myself. Anyway, see you for the next installment, which is where we will be, I think we make the snowball, no, we make the pinwheels next. So we're going to be making a bunch of half square triangles. So see you then. Bye. Hey, thanks for sticking around. I'm guessing you're here because you want to know how to sew up the flying geese in Patriot using an AccuQuilt Go cutter. Well, it's pretty simple. You're going to need the 8-inch cube, and you're going to need 2 dies from that cube. You're going to need, I can never find the number when I'm looking. This is die number 5 and die number 4. Let me show you how you're using them. Die number 5 will be for the white part, or the sky part of your flying geese. Die number 5. Die number 4 you'll use to cut out the goose unit, or the blue part, specifically blue 2 in the pattern. So this is what you're making, and die 4 will cut the blue. The pattern on page 1 not only tells you what die you need for each of the substitutions, so the flying geese, but also the half square triangles that are coming up later. It also tells you on that page what size to cut your strips. You can guess because you just have to add a ½ inch or some wiggle room to the width of this for the white, and a little bit of wiggle room for the blue strips. But the pattern tells you what size to cut them and how many triangles to cut. Pay attention though. For example, it tells you to cut 36 triangles for the goose. And notice that you're cutting 4 at a time with this die. So you only need to run it through 9 times, or 9 fabric folds. And since you can do 6 fabric folds at a time, you're running it through twice, and then you're done. You're going to need 72 of the little white triangles, and you're cutting only 2 at a time. So you need to run it through 36 times. However, you can fold your fabric and up to 6 times. So 36 divided by 6 is 6 times through. You're going to be running this if you fold 6 layers of fabric on each one. I am going scrappy, so the way I'm doing it is I'm doing just a few at a time, but I'm keeping track of how many triangles I'm cutting so that I know exactly how many more I still need to cut. I'm not going scrappy on the blue part. I've decided to make that all one uniform color. I am going scrappy for the blue that's used here in the pinwheel part. So now that we have a few triangles cut and a few, the blue goose and the 2 sky, let me go to the sewing machine and I'll show you how, the other thing I like about AccuQuilt, which is that it's super easy to sew the triangles onto the goose, and you're going to end up with accuracy at the end. So let's go to the sewing machine and do that. We're at the sewing machine, and as you recall, I've got a blue goose and a white, 2 white triangles, which will be the sky. So you probably noticed that when AccuQuilt cuts your triangles, it notches them. That helps you put them together perfectly for sewing. Notice also that there's a notch down here. So I'm going to put right sides together. I'm going to match the notch here, and at the top there's going to be a little point showing. That's fine. Let me go ahead and pin. And then I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch here. I like to sew on and off a scrap of fabric. It helps to keep my thread tension nice from the get-go and avoid any thread nests on the back. So now what I need to do is go press this. I think what I'll do to save time is I'll go ahead and finger press. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing there. So, done a pretty good job for now. And it's time to add the other square. Right sides together, match that little notch here at the end, and then again you're gonna, now at this point this notch is going to match up with the flat side of the other triangle. So let's pin, and we're ready to sew. Sewing on a smaller machine than usual because my big machine is at the spa. Now I will finger press this for now, but I will go to the ironing board and actually press. But you'll see. There. It's going to measure perfectly when we go and check it. But let's go do that now. Let's press and then check for size. So, as you see, they're pretty easy to sew together. Now all we have to do is press instead of finger pressing. And I like to press my seams open. As you saw, I have a clapper that's round and that really helps in pressing seams open. And then I use a wool pressing mat and a hot dry iron. Now that we've repressed it, let's just double check for size. I always like to do that. So as you can see, it's pretty bang on. I'll go ahead and just trim a little tiny bit there. And if you're going to trim the sides, make sure that you use your halfway measurement and put that right on the point there, so that you're trimming evenly on both sides. As you can see, I maybe need to trim just a tiny bit, but otherwise it comes out perfect. So here in no time I've made my one flying geese using AccuQuilt, and I hope you will enjoy using AccuQuilt to make Patriot. It really does make it pretty fast. If you like this video, and I hope you do, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps other people find it too. And then subscribe to my channel and you'll be notified the next time I upload another video. That's it for Quilt Along. Patriot Quilt Along for now. And I will see you, I believe, next week, where we will be sewing up the next unit, which are the half square triangles to make the pinwheel that goes in the center of the star. So, and at that point, I will show you how to cut and, what dies you need to cut, and how to sew half square triangles using AccuQuilt. But I will also show you how to do it if you're following the directions in the pattern. So stay tuned, and we'll talk later. Remember, there are links in the description for watching my other videos, for checking out last week's post if you missed it, so that you can catch up and be with us in the quilt along. And check out my blog post for this week, because it mentions the additional prize sponsors that have joined the quilt along. And so I hope you're, of course, I'm doing this for charity, and that's great, and I really appreciate the people who have served our country, defended it. So I'm proud to be making a quilt of valor, but for you, I am excited that one of you, well, two of you will win some of the prizes, so that's kind of cool too. That's it for now. Watch your inbox for the next installment, and I'll see you next time.